Of school and state, I think I defer to her in addressing that issue.
Sure, let's hear from Diane.
Well, you will find a lot of different opinions about public education or education in general in libertarian circles. But essentially, my belief is that I have 3 children who are in public schools. I've had them in private schools as well. And the separation of school and state alliance also believes, as well as I do, and that's why I support them, that we should end public schools. After all, that is where our children are being educated to believe the things that you're talking about right here and now. There's a lot of differences in opinion, like I said, of what is freedom. And in regards to education, some people believe that in libertarian circles that tax credits are a way to freedom. Others believe vouchers are a way to freedom. I personally believe that that only monopolizes the government. It increases the monopoly of the government school because it puts it doesn't fix the problem of who controls what goes into schools, because whoever's paying for it is who gets to decide what the curriculum will be. So the funding is what has to be changed. And if a person...
You are against vouchers, Diane?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Even though it's a marketplace that's being established, which is sort of consistent with the idea of libertarians, by understanding.
But the money is government money.
Yeah, that's true.
So
equivalent government money that would have gone to government schools, right?
Pardon me?
Ultimately, the idea is to eliminate government schools and just get grants for vouchers.
Well, that isn't my idea of freedom. My idea of freedom is, and the reason why I believe this is because the personal responsibility has to be there in order for anything to work. If a parent doesn't have to pay out of their own pocket for their child's education, you're not going to get a parent to be involved with their child's education, to care about their child's education, and to be in the schools watching what's going on. It's just the way that it is. If you don't have to pay for it, you kind of, figure it's all taken care of. So even though a voucher sounds like a great idea, on the surface, the strings attached are far too thick. And you may get some sense of freedom, and you may see a little bit more of what you want in the schools, but it'll just take that much longer also than in 25 years for everybody to be arguing the same arguments they are today about the public schools and the same problems, but we have a voucher. Why? So that is what's going to happen ultimately. The most important part of a child's education is parental involvement. And the best way you can get it is by having parents pay for the education.
Not tax it and send it to the central government.
But the other question I did have,
yeah.
not in relation to any of this, kind of a lot lighter, but from your standpoint, the last couple of weeks we've been seeing a lot of things on TV about third parties, especially in light of all these Republicans who are going to start their own party. And you never hear any of the commentators on news, TV, radio, anywhere saying that there is Libertarian Party. They never mention the name Libertarian. They talk about it small L Libertarian,
right.
But they don't actually say, well, there is a third party, besides the Reform Party, which is really an anomaly built on a personality.
I don't know what the Reform Party intends to stand for. It strikes me as a kind of
they don't know either.
Catch-all term, yeah, for people. What has Jesse Ventura got in common with Jeffrey Feiger if he runs as a...
See, that's exactly what Pamela and I were talking about, and I have run campaigns for office and in a couple of campaigns. And the last one, I had a lot of discussion with the State Board of Education for the Reform Party. And when I would ask him things like condoms in schools and where he stood on those issues, he said that they don't stand on those issues. They don't have a stand on those issues because those are social issues. So they're not political. And so you can be anything and be a Reform Party
Yeah,
candidate.
it's a catch-all. It's a haven. It is not a political philosophy.
But why do you think we don't hear people actually saying, when they speak of third parties specifically, well, you know, there is the Libertarian Party?
The honest answer is, I think this party has been discounted and forgotten by the mass media, at least for now. And I think that's the ugly reality of it. Populists like Ventura and a few others have the national spotlight right now, and they are the third party of choice, of designation. The attention of the mass media is a very, very fragile thing. You have to understand that. It flits from one to the other without any consistency nor coherence, but it has no institutional memory either. Your yesterday, Jesse Ventura is now. He was elected governor. He's not a Republican, he's not a Democrat. That's third party by definition, because that's all they know, because that's what's...
Yeah, but he also says he's a Libertarian.
Well, he says a lot of things.
You know, so it's like, we can say you're a Libertarian, but we won't mention that there is actually a party, a Libertarian.
I think if you tested him, you would find he's a great deal less than a Libertarian.
Well, I'm sure that he is.
Yes, sir.
I'm really a little, Dan's a good friend of mine, but I get a little tired of people complaining about our lack of attention in the press. That's our fault. It isn't anybody else's fault. We went through a period in the 1970s where we were growing, and in the 1980s we stagnated and fiddled around and did nothing for 10 years. In the 1990s it started to turn around again. Harry Brown did something last time that is an indication of what we should do, and I wrote an article on it one time talking about option blocking in football, where if you're heading this way with the ball and you want to go outside, but they're holding everything to the outside, then you cut inside, or vice versa. What Harry did was forget the major media. He went for cable TV and got a lot more attention there than he ever would have gotten on the big three networks. And the big three networks, of course, are losing audiences like crazy. Their percentage of the market has dropped way, way down, as it should, because it's all pure blah. There's nothing to it at all. The ideas that I see are all on cable TV. If I didn't have cable TV, I wouldn't have a TV at all. But what we have to do is look for other ways to expand our market. I do it by talking to high school and college students, because these are the people who are going to be voting for the next 50 years. They're the ones who are already ready to rebel intellectually. They're a ripe market. I never talk to people my age about it, because they're mostly Roosevelt deadheads. They haven't had a thought since they were 16 years old. So I just figured, look where the market is, and look where the long-range growth is. It's in the kids. So I'm all for doing things for the kids, except my idea of doing things for children is educate them, expose them to these ideas. And I just noticed, I've been doing this pretty regularly since 1992, and I've noticed every year that the percentage of kids who agree with me at the end of my presentation is way, way up. Because I can point out what's wrong, where the inconsistencies are, and also give them a little moral push, being an old objectivist, from the standpoint of personal responsibility, rationality, using your own mind, and if your parents disagree with you, do your own thing. You know, but be prepared to pay the consequences if you make the wrong decision. And I find it works. So I think if we look for other ways to get our message out and forget the major media, it's going to win, because we've got to build from the bottom up, not from the top down.
Sounds right to me, and I also agree that libertarianism has an inherent appeal to young people that cannot be overestimated. It is a very, very powerful philosophy that ought to appeal to young people all over the country, of freedom and choice and personal responsibility and free will. I mean, from the perspective of one knocking on the door of life, what's to disagree with? It sounds great.
But you would actually find that really consistent if you look at the demographic of the internet.